Welcome to this very special conversation on writing for the digital media. With me is Jaya Bhattacharjee Rose and Shoma Wadhwa. Jaya is the co-founder of Ace Literary Consulting, former managing editor for journals for South Asia for Taylor and Francis. Also does a lot of work with publishers, Scholastic most recently. Shoma is a fellow at India Development Foundation, former deputy editor of the Indian Express. I think you've been a deputy editor many places, Shoma. Indian Express, Open, features editor at the Outlook, editor at HT on Sunday. Did I get that right, Shoma?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we thought is we'll talk about writing for the digital world. And the first thing I wanted to ask to start with is, we got a lot of comments asking, how is writing really different for the digital world? What kind of strange topic is this? So let's address that straight up. And this is my starting question, Jaya, to you first. Does this topic even make sense? I think it does. But why is writing different for the digital world? Does writing change? Because there are those who will argue, look, a good writer is a good writer. It doesn't matter which platforms you go to. So your take on that.
Hi, Nalin. Thank you for inviting me over here. My take on that is it can be complicated, but very simply put, writing in the print media and writing for the digital world, yes, there is a distinction, primarily because of the form and the formats. Print is static, fixed, and it can be amended only or edited in subsequent editions, whether it is a newspaper report or a book. But in a digital, when you write for the digital media and digital space, you can actually update it in real time. When this first began, no timestamps were ever issued. People would make silent edits on the digital space and leave it. Today, timestamps are put, especially by legitimate media houses, etc. They make it a point to put a timestamp. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of it, let me just quickly go through the kind of different kinds of digital formats that exist, and how then the writing can vary. So you can talk initially. Let's talk about blogging. Blogging is one of the largest and the significant parts of the digital media, and digital writing. Then it sort of developed into media houses, web houses. It's developed into different kinds of, social media platforms, which enabled and allowed consumers to create posts, which are also ostensibly forms of writing.
Mm-hmm. So Jaya, if I may add here, we used to have this debate.
So this comes with the culture, which is personal, the people and writing and hello.
Yeah, go on, Jaya. Go.
We can hear you.
And writing, okay, and writing for all of these varies. So, and writing is a very specific act of creation, of creating and using words to convey a piece of news, whether something personal or a commentary or an observation. Some space became so prominent and became so useful that there was a blurring of the definitions between writing and content creation. Now, when you get into that gray area, that immediately changes your perception on what are the rules of, how do you write? But writing for the digital media, if you narrow it down even further, it is very specific, it is clear, concise, and to a large degree, you need to legitimatize it. How do you legitimatize it?
So may I just add here, Jaya, if I may just add here, at the Times Group, we used to have this debate very often on, and before I ask you to respond, Shoma, we used to have this debate very often. For example, when you are writing for a traditional platform, say a newspaper, a book, a report, which is in the printed format, how your writing appears there. When most people today are consuming stuff for themselves. Secondly, of distribution and the form of consumption by the reader changes, and that automatically changes how you have to conceptualize what you're writing as well, going down to the drawing board. So for example, when somebody reads and this happens at two levels. One is at both at the level of the art of writing, and the second is at a very functional level. So for example, a headline that works in a newspaper may not always work when the newspaper is online, because it's often in the newspaper, it's in the certain context, on a certain page, it's framed by four other stories, which some of them are also linked to it. When it's standalone, it's very different. So in fact, we often used to have these workshops where we would look at, I mean, a large part of the page story that appeared in the paper, we would change the headlines for online. And this is not about dumbing down and so on, but very often, also because readers of a static product like a newspaper or a magazine in print, have already picked up that thing to read. On online, you are competing for space to be read with 30 other mediums, and with a reader who's very dynamic, who's scrolling through many things. And your piece is standing standalone. It's not, people are not necessarily coming to you to discover you. So you have to shout for attention in some ways. You can do it intelligently or you can do it really stupidly, but it changes, and therefore the craft therefore changes. Shoma, what your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting, I mean, the medium, of course, changes. Mediums are what? Basically, they are storage and storage of ideas, right? Pehle there was oral tradition, so there were mantras. You kept everything by sort of, you that's why we all did our paharas and we learned our tables, because that was how information was stored, created, how knowledge was passed on. Then there was, of course, around the 16th century, I think there must have been books, and so how we stored and how we wrote and how we conceived of knowledge itself. I mean, those things change. And then, of course, there was television, and television changed everything from, into the optics, the visuals, and we started in the print media, we started writing differently, because we started, I remember my editor, Vinod Mehta, he would always tell us, people will only read headlines and only read blurbs. And I remember when we first, when we first had the Outlook.com, he asked for the printouts to be shown to him. Print out,
Of Outlook.com.
let me read. Let me read the printout. So, I mean, I think, there is that famous saying that medium is the message. So we cannot overemphasize the fact that the medium changes the way we tell stories, but only the way we tell stories. What interests me as somebody who has reported and written and, as a researcher, are the stories indeed that we tell, the stories that we report, not so much the imaginative, creative. Of course, that also must be changing, because I've heard now, like a lot of film directors, they say that, we don't want to make films for the big screen. We actually want to make films for the phone, so that we can sort of, we want personal consumption. So the kind of storytelling has to change according to how you're conceiving of it being consumed. What interests me is really how this delivery mechanism, how this medium changes the stories that we need to tell. And I say need because I am very interested in, at UPS, I'm going to be teaching this course called Reporting Other Indias. So, I'm going to talk to students about how those Indias that are deprived, disadvantaged, and disenfranchised, how do we bring about stories about those Indias to a consumer that is that is sort of caught up in his or her own echo chamber of the kind of news he likes to or she likes to consume? How do we interest him in the stories that we need to say, that we need to tell of that India that lives in villages, urban slums, that India that we don't interface with at all, other than in malls as a security guard, or maybe somebody who's cleaning the loos after us, in a hotel. How do we make sense of India, and how do we interest the new and short attention span consumer in those stories? And I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion, also because I'm going to learn.
So I want to ask this question, and this is so a lot of people ask that. Jaya, you wanted to add something before I ask the question?
No, I was just going to say that somewhere down the conversation, we should actually connect it to how does then the writing change to when you those are the shifts which come into the writing because your delivery changes, your consumption patterns change.
Yes.
And how does it then affect your writing styles, and do those traditional forms of writing and the rules of writing, do they continue to govern writing for the digital space? Because in the digital space, there has been this explosion of formats. Anyway, now then you carry on and then we'll come back to this.
So Jaya, my
You were
question
asking.
to you was, I mean, let's park the digital space for a second. We'll come back to it. But a fundamental question, and this is something that is of interest to, I think, anyone who's getting into professions that require good writing. This is a question that's often been asked. So some people are brilliant, right? They can, they can just write. But is writing a craft, or is it a acquired thing? Can you learn how to write?
Well, okay, right. There are various ways. I mean, the jury is out on that. A lot of people say that you can actually write as long as you know how to express. It's the form of expression that you choose, and it's up to everyone else who judges what is writing. But when we are talking about writing, say in the creative space, or writing for formal writing, because a large part of the listed out require a certain sense of formal training. So you have to learn a certain basics over there, of what it entails and what it doesn't. But yes, with over a period of time, you can improve, because what is it? It's riyaz, it's rigor, it's discipline. If you want to be writing and you want to be communicating and you want to be conveying something, again, whether it's personal or formal, it'll only come with that regular discipline of writing.
Shoma, your take on that?
Because that will teach you how to expand your vocabulary. It will teach you how to write in a nuanced fashion. You can with what is considered a vocabulary of 800 words. That is what is construed as the standard principle. But 800 words is not enough to communicate, convey, talk, emotions, whatever it is.
800 words. Can I tell you that the biggest consumption in India today of news is news which is in 50 words, which is on InShort and platforms or Daily Hunt platforms like that. So there was this debate in certain newsrooms, for example, is long form writing gone? I think that's a reductionist debate, because whether it's like a debate about whether when the motor car comes, whether the horse wagon was better and whether we are losing something by doing that. The question is, how do you adapt to it, and how do you make sure that put out, I mean, the content that we think is important. So if you ask me personally in terms of duration, so for example, a Twitter post, to me, if you're a content creator today or a journalist today, how you communicate on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube or on a podcast is as important as what you're doing in an article. And the way and that article could be 800 words or a much longer piece of word or 500 words. And actually, it's far more difficult to write a shorter piece than writing a longer piece, because then you really have to know what you're talking about. So, So, and I think each of these is a different craft. Shoma, your take on writing, on whether it's art or science, and then I have a question for Jay after that.
I think it's craft. I mean, I think you can learn painting, or but you can't really be an artist. I mean, I think there is something more to it than just the riyaz. I mean, there are. I mean, I'm sure Jaya is blessed, so she does not understand, but everybody can't write. I mean, to a certain extent, you can become better writers. I mean, I think a lot of students are very lazy and a lot of journalists are very lazy, and they will say that. Um, but also I think if you confine this discussion to what you are what we are going to be talking about, at least in the media school, I mean a whole large part of it, it is going to be also about the reporting, right? It's not just about, you can be a great writer but be a very bad reporter. Similarly, you could be a great reporter and you could sort of, not be so skilled at writing. And there was always traditionally the desk and the editor who could sort of dress it up. But, if you came in with the Beaufort story, then you weren't judged on whether you're a good writer or not. And long form writing had its own place. And I think what you said is very important, that today in the news world, the Twitter and the podcast and all of that is very, very important, because those are all mediums that are actually being those are the mediums that are attracting the consumer. So I think you have to learn the craft of how to communicate through them. And there, I think it has to be more than just about writing. For instance, if you wanted to, I was just
Sorry,
thinking when you said, for instance, if you
my
wanted to,
connection or you, Shoma?
sorry, are you back? So for instance,
Shoma, can you hear me?
if you wanted to sort of convey how bad the economic condition is today, it won't be like 3 lines of evocative writing. Today, perhaps if you just said that, India is going through its worst recession, to date, its second recession since liberalization, its fourth since independence, that'll sort of, grab more attention than 3 beautifully written lines. So I think communication is different from writing, and writing is a little different from, they're all cousins, but, but, they are different entities. Yes.
So let me, now that we're talking about familiar relationships in writing and cousins and so on, you run what is by far the most popular blog on publishing in the country. You also work with manuscripts and with publishers all the time, and with older forms of writing. How different is running a blog from the other forms of print writing you do? What is the extra? How different is the craft when you do that, and what other things you have to do purely for running that, as opposed to writing a piece for a newspaper? What's the big difference in the way you write for the blog?
Okay. Discipline. I mean, there is maybe the only difference is in terms of the fluidity and also the expansiveness while writing on the blog. You're not restricted by a word limit. And it's also because it's a personal outpouring, even if it's say it's a book review or an interview or something, you're not restricted by the word limit. But at the same time, because I have grown up at a time and been trained as an editor, and at a time when we had nothing, I mean, there was nothing digital about our world. That kind of training is inculcated in one, so you use it. And one of the things I've discovered is using that formal training of writing, which is by checking on the quotes that you use, by checking on any links that you may offer, embed the links. Those basic rules, there are basic ethical rules of writing. They also get into the etiquette of writing. This is much more than just learning the rules of writing. And these actually slowly help in legitimizing your writing, because people then see it as authentic. But even if you want to interview somebody, you want to quote somebody, I always replay whatever is going up, even on my blog. If I'm involving somebody else in it and I'm using a quote of theirs or interviewing them or whatever it is, I will always replay it and only run that which they have approved of. I will never misquote them. Now, those are things those are methodologies which I am privy to, but nobody else is. And yet, over a period of time, it develops a veneer of authenticity and legitimacy. Now, the difference with doing manuscript editing or technical documents, reports, etc. Is that's very, old points. You have to know it's always very
or generally, but I can't really hear you. So if we just
I'm
pause
back.
there. Shoma, when you were, Shoma, could you hear what Jaya was saying?
Yes, no, I couldn't. We lost her
I think we
for a
lost
bit.
the connection there, Jaya. The
For a
connection was a
bit.
bit
Yes.
unstable.
If you could just
But I think
repeat the yeah.
if you could just repeat the last couple of lines because we lost
But
it there,
I'm
Jaya.
back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Can
If you could just repeat the last couple of lines, Jaya, because we lost the
you hear me
connection there.
now?
It's a bit unstable. So let me ask Shoma a question and we'll come back to you, Jaya. Uh, uh, Shoma, you heard what Jaya was talking about. But then, we are also talking about writing in a very general sense. But of course, as you know, that, and you refer to this about when you're reporting and so on, when you are writing about that world, which is not part of your world, when you're writing about, say, the village or the urban slum or that part of the world which or that part of the city which you are not in, or other languages or cultures, there are often sub biases that creep in, right? There are conscious biases, there are unconscious biases, and so on. In your experience, how do you, and that's something that you would also be teaching about at UPES. How do you guard against that, and what are the things to keep in mind? Normally, people are when you're talking about difficult issues around gender, issues around sexual assault. I'm not even going there. I'm even talking about just writing very simple stuff in a setting which is not part of your setting.
Yeah. Firstly, it's very interesting, but I think I mentioned what I'm going to teach at UPS, and the chat box is showing a lot of comments saying that how do you pass the UPSC exam to get here? So I think something like that.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no. I think what Jaya just said is so very important in the sense that because the medium has changed, our ways of engaging with the consumer might have changed, but our ethics should remain the same. This thing that she spoke about playing back quotes and say for example, even the issues of language. Mostly when you do stories from the other India, you are reporting people who speak a different language than yours. How do you remain as close to what they meant? How do you translate, retranslate, and play it back? So what you would do is you would take you would ask your translator to translate what was said to you in, say, Bangla into English, and then you would again ask somebody else to translate it into Bangla. So you would do a double translation thing, and you would see how close it is. Of course, I mean, depends. So what the digital world, I think, also would have done is it would have not just attention spans, but also the time that you get to produce stories, to because it's time is of the essence, and it's like a beast, and you're always feeding it. If we thought television was quick, digital is not even real time, it's ahead of real time. So how do you keep to feeding information, credible information, to this beast who needs 24/7 into every minute, every second? You keep to your ethics, and you remember that the other India, or the others that you can't control or change the others and the stories of the others, but you do take the same set of ethics to each reportage. In fact, for the course, I was looking at some of the material that I'm going to share with my students, and ahead of time. I was looking at this, the coverage of CNN, the same CNN, it covering a hospital in UP, in one of a primary health center in UP. And it is sort of getting inside, and it is showing you patients who are sort of gasping for breath, and they're like wails from piche, oh meri maa mar rahi hai, tatti ho gayi hai, and stuff like that. And the cameras are directly, you know, upfront, in your face kind of camera, and that's what is rolling. And then I found the same CNN covering Italy and hospitals inside when the pandemic was at its worst in Italy. Like, Italy didn't know what was happening. And the tone, the recording, the camera angles, the perspective with which here you are investigating the doctors, you're going and you're asking them tough questions, and you're telling them, why isn't this woman being given, and there it's like all about how the doctors are sort of, you know, slogging away and toiling. And remember, the death rates and the death toll and everything remains the same in both the countries at that time, but you go with a different gaze. Why? Because this is the other. And why do I, an elite English speaking person, feel bad when this is shown? Because that is also the other to me. So we have to remember that the concept of otherness is something that we carry in our heads. And we have to be very, very conscious of this while we are writing and informing others, whether the medium is print, or it is television, or it is digital. I think that is the most important lesson to be learned, you know, for all of us who are in the communications business, really, because not all of us are writers. I think we are necessarily communicators, and, you know, that we have to remember. Sorry. Yes, Jaya.
Jaya, can you hear us? Oh, Jaya has got frozen. Shoma, let me ask you something. Jaya, are you back? Can you hear us?
One thing. I'm glad you brought up the point about time is of the essence. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. You're frozen, but I can hear you. I'm glad you brought up the time is of the essence element, because that is exactly what impacts a lot of the writing for the digital space. How can you, I mean, apart from trying to transcend all these linguistic barriers and communicate with rapidity about, you know, events unfolding, say, as a reporter, but even when there is a little bit of time lag permitted, say, in the cultural space, etc., the fact is that it has become a much faster space. We need to create, and because the consumption patterns are so vast and they're so huge, and those appetites are humongous and they're never ending. And also because the other thing is the digital space cuts across time zones. So you don't know at what time when somebody's accessing you. Print, when we were in a slower world, we had the 24-hour rhythm. And now to manage time, manage writing skills, manage this, we come back to the first observation of yours, where can you, Amton Allens, can we learn the craft? Well, sometimes we have to learn the craft at quick speed, because that's the only way to ensure that we remain relevant and legitimate. And maybe over a period of time, some of us get also tagged as influencers, because there is so much information out there and there is so much overload. You need to find out where the authentic information lies, and those who are creating it need to have that skill. Yeah, Nalin,
I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you an example of this on writing in the digital space, and how things that get added to your checklist, which becomes part of the hygiene, basic hygiene, if you like, so that you reach your reader. When you are writing for a newspaper, like you mentioned, this 24-hour cycle. So say something happens with Lalu Yadav today, and there is a big story that happens. Now what happens is, earlier, when I'm writing for a newspaper, I had 24 hours to think about it and write this really special piece out beyond the news about it. What's happening now is that for most media publications in this country, or most media platforms, upwards of 70 to 80% of their consumption is happening on search engine optimization through Google or through social media. With very honorable exceptions apart, in general, 80 to 90% of the consumption is coming from those sites. What happens there is, if 70% of your of whatever you're producing is being consumed only reaching your reader, not only reaching your reader through Google, then you have to appear high up in the Google search engine search, right? And if another 20-30% is coming only from social media, in many places, social media accounts for 70% of your readership. Then you have to appear good enough in the search feed. and certain things matter there a lot. It doesn't matter if you got the best piece on the planet. First,
Ellen, I would
we
like
discovered.
sorry. I just
Sorry, go on.
wanted to ask you something. Since you've sort of straddled all of these worlds, you've written and you've sort of been so much in the online space. Is there really a difference between say even in, say writing for a podcast? Because I'm sure they don't just speak, right? They
Yes,
write
yes.
something and then this.
Yeah.
Is it like,
So let me. I'll answer that question. Just
That's it.
let me finish the previous point, and I'll answer that question. So what I was trying to say was, we discovered, for example, if you don't have a picture in your digital article, the Google algorithm it does not rate you high enough. Now think about a newspaper. Most stories in a newspaper do not have pictures. Only the important stories have pictures, right? So by definition, if you are simply putting that up just like that, you will not appear higher in the search engine. Some other article on the same topic will reach higher up. Even if there is very high reader interest on Lalu Yadav or on that aspect of Narendra Modi that you're writing about at that point of time, that's one. So you have to have the picture. It increases your chances of discoverability. It has to be the right kind of picture. Second, um, today, unlike earlier, people consume things when they want to consume it. They don't consume it at the periodicity that you want them to consume. So, it's the same thing with the 9 o'clock news on television. They used to be 9 o'clock because that's the time that was national broadcast. I mean, many 30 years ago. Now most people are consuming it on their phone, right? So what happens is, when we did this study, for example, in our newsroom, we found that the same, if something has happened, say, and I'm sticking with the hypothetical example of Lalu, something has happened with Lalu right now, the maximum interest in that topic is for the next 3 to 4 hours.
oh,
You next day will write a big story and you will write some great insight 24 hours later. The audience, and we checked this with several things we did, the audience you get the 24 hours later on the same thing, if it is a very good piece, it'll still get some audience. But it would have potentially got a 80, 90, 200% audience more than it would get the 24 hours later, than when people are searching for that topic right now. Because remember, 80, 90% of your readership is coming from Google only, or from search, from SEO itself. So therefore, that if you're a content creator, leave alone a journalist, you have to really care about how your content is reaching your audience. And if you miss the trick on that, by definition, you're killing your product. It doesn't matter if you make the best product. It doesn't matter if you're the best writer on the planet. In general, the other point on podcasting, I think Shoma, you asked this point on podcasting, right? So look, I think good content always works, but the, of course, what is good is very debatable. I think there are certain hygiene rules. Look, when, like you said, when the medium changes, the way you present changes. If I'm doing a podcast, the way I write it, I mean, I have to have all the facts with myself. I have to have a clear storyline. But the way I frame it, the way I storyboard that entire sequencing of what I'm talking about, of course, it changes from when I'm writing an article, or how I'm writing a television report.
so
It's very different. It will be different.
So at one level, what's happening is the algorithms are curating news for me that I am interested in anyway. So I am getting more of what I'm reading, and then I'm reading more of what I'm reading because I'm reading more of what I'm reading. So there is that. And how does one, if one believes that there are important stories to be told, how does one break that cycle?
No, but you break that cycle by being firstly accepting that there is no one way of telling that. There's not just one good way of telling that story. How I tell the same story on Facebook is different from how I'll tell it on Twitter, how I'll tell it on Instagram, and how I will tell it on WhatsApp. It's not the same. If I use the same, I mean, the easiest thing for me is, I've written a good story, I put the same headline on all these platforms. If I do that, I am by definition reducing the prospective audience you'll get. On Instagram, it's a different kind of audience. You use a different kind of picture. It's very pictorial. You have to find that right kind of picture. You have to get another kind of headline on that. On Facebook, it is different. On Twitter, it is different. I'll give you an example. The Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, which is one of the most important archives of ancient manuscripts in this country.
Yeah,
They have, in the last few days, they've been doing fascinating stuff on Twitter, where for the different parts of the Mahabharata, they're putting out different storylines on Twitter as Twitter threads. And the way they're doing it is fantastic. They're not dumbing down their content, but they're talking about the ancient manuscript in different ways, and they're attracting an entirely new audience, an audience they've never had, by changing the way they tell their story, by talking it in, by simply deigning to, by leaving aside, a lot of academic institutions and a lot of older storytellers have this thing that, look, I know it all, and you have to first understand my language, then you are good enough to learn what I'm saying. I think that's just the most stupid way of looking at things, because then you're just going to die of irrelevance. And what the Bhandarkar Institute has been doing at Social, for example, is fantastic, because they really are attracting an entirely new audience by simply adapting to what works on Twitter as a form of distribution.
So that is, Shoma, can I just add?
Please.
What the thing is that actually the story and whether you use the word content may remain the same, but what Nalin is a fine example he's used is how do you rack it up? How do you make that discoverability factor there? Every medium in the digital space has different rules of engagement, has its own language, has its own way of conducting itself. So, for instance, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram give you only a fixed set of characters. They vary from length to length, and I think Twitter has recently increased its character space from 140 to 280. But Facebook is how do you discover it? How do you use the hashtag? What are the keywords? What are the relevant words? So the story remains the same, but how do you tweak it? Now, those are the skills of the craft that you have to learn. I mean,
that's the same. And yeah, that's the same whether you're a journalist or whether you're a marketeer or whether you are telling your own story of your brand.
And the other thing we constantly combating in India is, as you are India, just talking in terms of different languages, it's very difficult for us to tag and use other languages and be discovered in that. That which we engage in the physical space is not very easy to do in the digital as yet. Nalin, you were saying something.
Yeah, sorry, we are losing. Your connection keeps going up and down. So let me. I know we were talking earlier, and I think Jaya was making this point earlier before we got on air, and she was making this point that engaging on different digital platforms is almost a form of being multilingual. You speak in one language, but here you are dealing with different dialects and or in different other languages, almost like learning how to converse in that. And there are different languages. It's not just about the word length. The demographic is different on each of these platforms. So what appeals to one demographic may not appeal to another one. And so you don't change your story, you just find different angles in it. And that takes time and effort. Let me ask this question on the craft of writing. The thing that I find the most difficult thing in writing is finding an opening, finding a headline, and finding the opening. So for example, Arun Puri used to say this thing, whenever you're pitching a story, what is your headline? First tell me what is your headline. Then you tell me what the story is. So finding the headline and then, a lot of people know what they have enough of. If you're making biryani, they have the condiments, they'll have the rice, they'll have the chicken, they'll have the mutton, whatever, but they don't necessarily know how to cook it up. So the opening to me is often the most difficult thing to do. Once you get the opening, then things flow. How difficult is that, Shoma? Your take on that?
It's difficult, especially when you're writing about subjects which are deemed deeper and more intense. So say our current my current research agenda is to do with literacy and financial inclusion. So women, so the hypothesis is this, that women, when they are more literate, are more aware and more active around banking. These are, I'm talking about poor women, rural poor women. So this is a hypothesis, and it is very dull. It is very dull for most people. So the best chance that I would have is to get into Hindu or something, which is, and even so, say I wanted to make it at least, intelligent, palatable or attractive for somebody who might not at all be interested in all the keywords, financial inclusion, women, poor, none of these interest me. So what do? I look for what you call in online is that bait, the clickbait, right? So the hook, the how do you get? So some woman had at some point in time told me in one of the villages that, and this later on I found a lot of women saying that, मुझे अच्छा ही नहीं लगता आदमी लोग छूते हैं, and it has struck me कि why are they talking about men touching them in the banks? But that's how you start. That's how you get people interested, that Pushpa doesn't like men touching her in banks. But actually when you go on to read it, it's about men holding her thumb and making her put the thumbprint, and she hated it as an illiterate woman, and now that she can sign her name, men don't touch her. But you try and at least get the eyeballs in. Once they are in, maybe then. But this is a very journalistic kind of trait, and you have to this is not something researchers or academics would start writing on financial inclusion with. But if you're a communicator, if you are sort of looking to pull in an audience that is otherwise not going to be interested, you are going to have to devise ways of getting to interest them in it. And of course, headlines and all are, I really think they are art. Not everybody is very good at headlines. Some people are just naturals. But again, I do believe that it is something that you can learn to get better at. Some people are brilliant, but to say that it cannot be learned is just to be lazy. I think when young students learn at institutes such as this, some of them might want to become marketeers, some of them might want to become journalists, some of them might want to become, but the communication bit, the wanting to interest other people in what you have to say, the stories that you have to tell, that is a craft that can be learned and bettered.
So Jay, I have a question for you. So when we were starting out as journalists, so there were people who were very structured, who would figure out what the introduction is, what the middle is, what the end is, all the points they'll figure. And there will be people who will just start writing, and they'll be effortless.
Yeah.
And then the others who would never know what to do, and somebody else will write the story for them. But so what is the method that you follow? I mean, because it's different so for different people, right? So how do you structure your writing? Yeah, that's for you. Can you hear me, Jay? Yeah.
Oh, that's for me. Oh, yeah, I can hear you. I heard you talk about the journalist and the structuring of the writing. Yes. But if you're talking about, you're asked about structuring my writing in blogs or in articles?
In general, I'm just asking you.
Because that way I lost.
Yeah.
In general. Okay, in structuring, the structuring remains the same. I was fascinated listening to the two of you about how you first started with a headline, because that is definitely not the way we write. The way I've learned it is, yeah, you have a peg, you have to know it, but you create your story. Now, if it's an essay, then of course it is with the heading. But if it's in blogging, you write, whether it's a response or whether it's a review or whether it's an opinion piece. But usually when I blog, I find it easiest to be very basic in my headline and hardly any subheadings. But when I write structured pieces, when I write formal print pieces, there is a beginning, middle, and end. But that holds true for all my writing, whether it put my points down, structure them 1 to 10 or whatever it is, club it as what is the introduction, what is the middle, and what is the end. And then I will write it out. So there are vestiges of that formal writing even for the blogging space. I find that very convenient. It helps to structure it. It helps to keep a flow. and it helps to, I'm beginning to discover people find it informative, because then it's response to understanding of that, because any form of writing only always displays 1/10 of that iceberg. You have that knowledge, you have the context. That's why you can structure it and keep it nuanced. You know,
Yeah.
it goes a little beyond reporting, I think. You know,
Yeah.
but even in reporting, if you know the context, you can write a nuanced piece.
Okay.
You know,
So let's take some questions.
Have the two of you seen people evolve as writers?
yes, I definitely have. I
You have.
definitely have. Oh, definitely. And I have seen them. I mean, I've seen them because I've been with publishing since what, nearly 30 years or more. And I have seen writers evolve. I have seen people who have had a desire to write and have taught themselves the craft of writing. And by when I say that taught themselves the craft of writing, it is not learning the rules as much as gaining the confidence to speak what you have to say, but correctly.
That's
So,
very.
And it holds
Soma,
true for all
to answer,
forms,
to
from
add to
creative
what Jay
fiction
is
to
saying,
non-fiction.
so to add to what Jay is saying, I mean, in the context of newsrooms and in the context of strategic communications in different organizations, absolutely. But I've seen a lot of people significantly change, not just incremental change, but you have to really want to do it and you have to work really hard at it. It doesn't happen just by doing the same job without really wanting to and working extra hard on it. But yes, I have seen people significantly up the game on that. Um, there is a question. Let's take a few questions. We're running out of time. Uh, there is a question on which, according to you, is the best portal where you think digital writing is the best. Any of you want to take a
Sorry, I
go at
can't.
that?
I
So
could.
digital portals. The question is, which, according to you, is the best portal with where you think on digital where you think writing is better?
Um, Shoma, you want to answer
No,
that?
please go ahead, Jaya.
Okay, that is a very broad-based question because it's really
Yeah,
dependent upon what you seek. What you seek,
yeah,
you know, whether it's news consumption or whether it is long reads or whether it is reportage, whether it's creative fiction. Those are very specific domains, and they definitely have a hierarchy there. So I'm not going to name any portals, but depending upon what the person searches for, whether it's sports or anything, they'll find the best in that space.
Yeah, but I just
yeah,
want to add one little thing to what Jazz said. But it is very, very, very crucial to, if when you want to up your game as a writer, that you read. I it is
yeah,
very important to read.
yeah.
It's really important to read to be a
Absolutely.
writer.
There is a question on why is writing in
Oh,
mass
I was just going to say
communication
that.
always,
I was going to say that.
why is writing in mass communication
Oh, no.
always considered with news? Can I learn to be a good screenwriter with UPS program? So I think yes. Um, Writing, of course, is much wider, more wide-ranging than news alone. News is only a subset of that. Um, at UPS, we do have, to answer this specific question, a specific program on digital media and mass communication, which specializes in broadcasting, and where you do have specializations on both digital video and digital audio, also strategic communications and fields and allied fields, and that is a very specific art. How do you write for video platforms? And those can be different kinds of video platforms, right? News is just one of those platforms. There are other video platforms, there's films and all of those things. We look at digital video in its entirety, and we do have a very detailed specialization on that with a writing component built into that, because that's crucial to it. Um, in this age when videos are easy to consume, do you think writing has scope? That's another question. I think that stems from this fact that if you look at any metrics, any data around digital today, you find video is the fastest growing platform for the last 4 or 5 years, or at least the last 2 3 years. Google's Next Billion Users program has been driven around the world, has been driven largely by India, and that's largely through the growth in video and regional languages. Since last year, I think there's been a major growth in audio as well. India is now at a takeoff point on audio. Where does that leave writing? I don't think that changes writing. I think there is a very strong, yeah. Shoma, you wanted to intervene?
Yeah, I just want to say here, I think here is where I am. I don't think writing, we are only talking about the J.K. Rowling type of writing. You know,
Yeah.
I think people who are engaging with this panel are interested somewhat in this space, or the space that UPES is going to provide to people who want to sort of be in the communications business. And I think to them it's very, very important for students to understand that even a video story has to be written. It has to be conceived. We are talking about conceiving of ideas such that they are transmitted. I think that is what we are going to be trying to do in our courses. It is not about कि आपको अच्छी कहानी लिखना सिखाना है. That's creative writing. That is also very, very important. But that is creative writing. And you know, as for your screenplays and screenwriting, all of that also, you know, you have to be informed of the world and its dynamics to be able to produce great cinema, great art, great. You can't be in a vacuum, and so all of it is basically communication. No, Picasso didn't draw those odd things because he did not know how to draw. That's not how, you know, and just because somebody can draw Radhaji best or Krishnaji best, is not a great artist. So it's not just the craft. What we're trying to tell you here is that it is about the ideas that you're going to be able to conceive when you want to write and transmit them. So yes, I mean, if you want to be screenplay writers, or you want to be advertisers, or you want to sell, even say sanitary napkins to rural India, you need to understand rural India, boss. I mean, if anybody needs to understand people and tell their stories, it's when you are asking for their money. So I think it's very, very important to know how to communicate with people. And I think that's what these courses are going to offer students. And I think that's where we should, you know, because right now nobody's going to teach you how to type and how to, you know, put on the computer and paragraphs kaise likhte hain. I think this course is for beyond that.
There are a couple of more questions and we're running out of time. So Pranav has got a question. Could sensational coverage also be because channels are vying with one another for more eyeballs? Is it not? It's not necessarily ethical or correct though. So yeah, I mean, look, the media business is a business. Anyone who tells you it's not a business is either lying or does not know what they're talking about outside of public broadcasting. And public broadcasting only exists in the real sense in only one or two platforms. And there also there are several questions around that. So yeah, I mean, you have echo chambers and you have media platforms which have very clear positioning on the left, on the right, and so on. So that's part of that is the game. That is the way it is.
Just imagine if you knew how to tell the story of Sushant Singh. If you knew how to put it in the framework and make it, everybody's interested, and there are so many issues there that story can tell. It talks about suicide, it talks about loneliness, it talks about mental health, it talks about celebrity. There are so many issues there, but you have to learn the craft to bring those issues out and make them interesting to readers. No, otherwise it will become a sensational thing about one guy who sort of got drugged and maybe died.
There's a question on which print media do you think has adapted well in the transition to digital, as most newspapers are struggling? I'll take that question. I think the paper which has adapted the best so far in terms of the business has been Times of India, and I'm not saying that because I'm former Times of India. If you compare it with the Hindu, with the Express, with Mint in the Hindustan Times, there's no question. I mean, I think in print, in terms, if you look at the basic core vitals of the industry in terms of which paper is surviving, which paper is still a money-making enterprise. On the digital side, there is Times of India, and then there's everybody else. I mean, and I can go at length about it. We don't have much time to talk about it, and for several reasons. There are several issues with that model, but that model and it needs to change significantly. But at the moment, There are several papers which are just not even, they're doing what was passé even 5 years ago. So TOI is definitely far ahead of that curve. I'll leave it at that at this point. Madhya has a question: does the inclusion of personal accounts always make your piece eloquent, or does it turn out the other way around sometimes? How do you figure out when it's right to include personal accounts of individuals in your article? I think this is also a question of privacy. It's also a question of when do you insert yourself into the piece. Jay, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. It's also one of the fundamental rules of writing, which we were taught ages ago, was don't put the I there and don't put the personal there. But that is one of the things which has changed in the digital space. There's a lot much more of the I. So much to the extent that it's just overbearing.
Yes.
But when it comes into the writing space, it has to be done elegantly. Don't always force yourself into the writing. If the writing demands it, you will find yourself fitting in naturally and using the first person. But and that makes the piece stronger. But not necessarily if don't turn it into a formulaic principle of writing that the I must always be ever present. No, the I will come in and you will see it for yourself if the story demands it. But and this holds true for any kind of story, whether it is in narrative nonfiction, reportage, journalism, communications of any kind. That I comes in subtly. It can come in subtly or it can come in upfront, but you will discover it for yourself. It's not something which anyone can teach you.
Jay, we'll take one final question. Ishita has got a question on: in today's time, news is available on digital platforms 24/7. It is easy to access, short and crisp, and free of cost. So does print media have any scope left? It being paid, comparatively time consuming, and not necessarily portable. Well, I'll say one thing on that. It's only a misnomer that print is a paid product. It doesn't pay for itself. That 4-5 rupees that you pay for a newspaper, it doesn't even, the cost of producing that paper is somewhere around 25 to 30 rupees per copy. It's that 4-5 rupees is basically just what pays for the distribution, and print has always lived on advertising, at least for the last 20 years. So that's a very notional cost. Will print survive? Shoma, do you want to take this question?
No, the master is there. You answer that question.
And then after that, I want to answer something. I want to add something to that. Carry on, Nalin.
So my question on that is that, look, print is changing significantly. If you are asking me, will print be around in the next, say, 4-5 years? Likely to be around. Is it likely to be stronger? Very unlikely. And you cannot be a print reporter alone anymore. The skills which are in demand in journalism, of course, you have to be a good storyteller. Of course, you have to be good in that particular domain that you are working on, whatever domain you choose to work on. But can you survive if you think that you'll be a print reporter? Absolutely not. Every print reporter today is upskilling to learn how to transition to the digital phase, and those who aren't really shouldn't be in the medium anymore.
They shouldn't be in communication. They can be writers and authors.
Yeah, but they can't survive if you don't. I mean, I come across authors who say that, oh, we are not on social media, we can't do this and we can't do that. Then don't expect your books to sell. What I was coming to was, that's a very important point, an observation, Nalin, you made about the cost incurred in distributing print and the cost incurred in making the print as opposed to digital. Actually, there are many hidden costs in the digital world as well, which are humongous. Yes, they're humongous. I mean, there is cloud computing, there is maintenance of servers, maintenance of the IT team, maintenance of domain, maintenance of transference of technology as they are being updated and upgraded. There is a whole lot of hidden costs which are humongous. And this holds true whether you're an individual or a firm.
Yeah.
So as an individual, if you're doing your own blogging, etc., you have to be very aware.
Well,
and that also informs the kind of writing that you're doing, because it's a cost incurred.
Sure.
So you have to see whether you remain relevant or etc. not, or do you want to peter away or fizzle out by just writing in stuff. So these are very important points and salient points which need to come in.
I mean, my only observation is, I'm very fond of The Economist, and these days all the Economist articles, most of them come with a small recording also. So even I was thinking, I've been noticing the way the sentences are constructed. They have to be, because when you're reading, it's okay to read a long sentence with many commas and things.
Yeah.
But the sentences are now constructed in a way that when you're listening to them, they don't seem long drawn and boring and like a drudge. So yes, writing, even when you're
Can I
writing.
tell you, Shoma, this when I was with the earlier question of comparing different Indian newspapers in their transition, the TOI 2 years ago implemented this thing where every article in TOI you can also hear in audio. It's not, I mean, a lot of people don't realize it, but it's there. It was built. So, it may not work the best and so on. But that's what I mean. You've got to keep evolving as a platform.
And if you notice many of the articles, I think Mint and all, they all write 4-minute read, 2-minute read. So you are sort of, the grammar has changed anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, so we are out of time. So thank you so much, both of you. I think time has just flown very fast. So thank you so much, Jaya. Thank you so much, Soma. And thanks to everyone who joined. This is the beginning of many conversations which we will have as we start these programs and with the students who work with us. And like Shoma said, I think this is about engaging with ideas and playing with them, and then everything else is just a way of getting to another end. That's hygiene, that's mechanics. But unless you have the ideas, that part is pointless.
That's true.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much.